Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Catholic Talk Show. Today, we're going to be talking about the craziest Catholic conspiracies.
That's right. Get your tinfoil hats on because we're going to be looking at these crazy conspiracies like the fact that certain popes were murdered, there was Jesuit plots to overthrow the United States, female popes, and a lot of crazy things.
Shh. Conspiracies. Do you believe?
All right, great to have you guys back in the studio. We got Ryan Shield and Father Pagano. Hey, guys.
How's it going?
Yeah, I'm kind of pumped about this. I'm not much of a conspiracy theorist because every time I read them online or whatever, I'm like, whoa, this is crazy.
But at least we have one fanatical conspiracy theorist.
Oh, I don't believe in any of them.
Oh,
Yeah.
Get out of town.
He just knows
Shield.
about them because he knows everything. He drinks and knows things.
Not so much drinking anymore.
Yeah, well, no one
Drinking
thinks it's
water.
Coffee.
Yeah, you
I
got
don't
to
even have
drink.
coffee. I have water.
You need
Really?
fluids, man. You need fluids.
Hydration's important. That's not a conspiracy.
Yeah. No, but you drink and you know things.
That's
Got
true.
a little bit of Guadalupe roast in my cup this morning.
Me too. Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah. Ping.
Ting. Tasty.
So conspiracy theories, man. I mean, they're incredibly interesting. So many people like reading about them because conspiracy theories typically, in my opinion, come about because it's so hard to believe that the crazy turns in history and the things that impact the world happen by chance or happen by small coincidences. Like the assassination of Kennedy. It's so hard to believe for most people that the president of the United States was killed by a nobody. It seems like it's incongruous with the way the world works, that powerful people or really impactful events happen for seemingly inconsequential reasons. You only have to look at the beginning of World War I, which led to World War II, and all the deaths and all the madness that ensued. And it all goes down to just an incredibly coincidental happenstance that someone was assassinated kind of accidentally when they missed their first assassination attempt. These things unfold, so people try to find patterns and reasons and try to explain things that seem inexplicable through conspiracies.
Yeah, but conspiracies do exist.
Well, they exist, but are they true?
Right.
And if they didn't have any type of merit whatsoever or any type of, hold, then it really wouldn't hold people's attention. And it sounds like you're suspicious of all conspiracies.
I am. Because I just think
Shocking.
Shocking.
I just think knowing the way that the human mind typically works, it's usually fanciful thinking, or it's usually people over analyzing something that seems too simple for them to accept. Now, does that mean that every conspiracy on our list today is going to be untrue?
Completely false?
Yeah.
No. As a matter of fact, there's one of them that's very real and very awesome. And it was very much a conspiracy, and it's verified. And I can't wait to get to that one.
Hmm.
But first, let's get to some ones that I think are pretty spurious, right? They are. Now, you guys are Italian,
Yeah.
painfully Italian,
Yeah.
which means you guys have probably watched The Godfather way too many times, correct?
Not enough.
Life is beautiful.
I haven't watched it enough. Let's put it that way.
Well, there's 3 Godfather movies. The first 2 are awesome. The third one, not so much.
I agree.
But the conspiracy in that third one.
Is that, and this is our first conspiracy we're going to
That's
talk
true.
about.
I wasn't aware
Is
of
that
this.
Pope John Paul the First was actually murdered by forces within inside the Vatican Curia.
Okay.
With a cup of tea.
That's the
In the study
in the study.
with a candlestick.
It was the cardinal in the study with a cup of tea. So John Paul I, who's on his way potentially to sainthood,
Wow.
had one of the shortest pontificates in history.
Ever, yeah.
33 days.
Yeah.
Wow.
33 days after his coronation as Pope, he died in the middle of the night.
Hmm.
And the conspiracy theory at the time was that he was just coming into his pontificate and he'd been elected as kind of a compromise candidate or a candidate that the cardinals thought they can control. But as soon as he was elevated to the throne of St. Peter, he was not going to be the willing patsy to the plans of these cardinals who had formed a bloc to get him elected. And because of that, they had him killed.
Did he like turn on him? Is that the
that's the kind of basis of the theory.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Even the show, the HBO show, The New Pope.
Is it The New Pope or is it? It's something else. It's like
they had the Young Pope. The second season of The New Pope.
Oh, I haven't seen
and
that.
And that one, after the young Pope gets into a coma, the new Pope is elected. It's Francis II, and he was a very weak-willed person. Then he gets on the hat and he's like, "Oh wow, I'm gonna have all this power." They're like, "Oh, we made a mistake," and they killed him. And it's pretty much based on the same theory. So
there is a lot of people that believe in this theory and this conspiracy.
Wow.
I've talked to a ton of people that have different intel, not just based on the Godfather movie, but by other types of people sharing about their presumptions that John Paul I was killed.
Yeah, popes typically don't die within the first 30 days. But he was elected, and maybe it was the Theophylacti.
Are we believing this?
We're not believing this.
We're not believers.
No. So here's some of the reasons that people say that he was the basis of this conspiracy. One is that, and most of the ones go to the Vatican banks, that he uncovered massive corruption in the Vatican banks, or he had, after his elevation, he had access to all these records and said, "Wow, there's some crazy stuff going on here." And
in the first 33 days. That's kind of like the honeymoon phase, man. That's
maybe he was getting ready to work.
To dive into a big bureaucratic structure in 33 days, I don't believe that.
Most theories say that that's it. Either that or in the Godfather movie, it's the Immobiliare, which is like the world's largest landholder or real estate company, and the church is the world's largest real estate owner.
Yeah. But it's not owned as such. It's owned in separate... like diocese, like canon law separates and subsidiarizes property and other things like that. So it's not accessible to, let's say, the Pope to just start selling things off, especially in the United States. No, he can't say, "Hey, I want to sell the Diocese of Buffalo," or "I want," like the way that canon law sets it up is that it protects
jurisdiction. Jurisdiction.
Yeah, but the irregularities that cardinals were making investments and using it as a money laundering scheme.
Right.
And the Pope Pope was going to expose this corruption.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot kind of to this. I mean, some of these Vatican bankers, 4 or 5 years later, they were found hanging from the bridges in Rome with stones in their pocket, which is a sign of a Freemason assassination, all kinds of stuff, right? So, I mean, there's something there. There's
something's going on.
Yeah.
One priest, Father Charles Murr, he wrote a book a couple years ago, and he said that, and I'm not going to name the cardinal's name because it's hearsay or it's conspiracy, and I don't want to slander a dead cardinal, but essentially, the cardinal who had been in charge of appointing a lot of bishops, particularly very liberal bishops, and bishops that I would say were tended towards liking other cardinals too much.
Enough said.
Yeah,
they were in the
innuendo.
Yeah, the Lavender Mafia.
Gotcha.
So basically, he was going to reprimand him and strip him of his power. And this is the bishop who appointed a lot of these other bishops who have kind of perpetuated the Lavender Mafia, right? Including some of the ones who have caused big scandal in the United States. Again, I'm not going to mention names, who have been defrocked. But he was the last person to have been seen alive.
Pretty much narrow in on that pretty quickly.
Yeah, Ryan, well done. Well said. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know who I'm talking about.
Without naming names.
Right.
Interesting.
But this cardinal was the last person seen alive. The last person John Paul I was seen alive with. And
I did not know that.
Yeah. And I'm not going to name his name because, you can't make that accusation. If you want to find it, go out and find it. I'm sure you can find some crackpot website. But the last person the Pope was seen alive was with this bishop who was in charge of appointing all these kind of nefarious bishops. And he was going to strip him of his power and reprimand him for basically seeding the church with counter bishop agents. And that was it. And then Pope is gestorben.
Gestorben.
Yep.
Gestorben. Conspiracy.
The Vatican Bank, there's also theories about something that went down with the cardinal in Australia with his case too. And I think, you know, just like with any institution, it's been around for so long. There's probably some things going
Pal's
on
never
there.
been accused of sex abuse, and then he goes in
All
and
of a
starts.
sudden, he starts investigating the Vatican bank, and wham, he has some crackpot charge on him that's now being appealed, which is good.
And even
because-
if the appeal goes through, his reputation and career is still ruined.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
but I pray for him a lot.
But you see,
I do.
that's how conspiracy theories get started. Maybe
I
he
just
was
started
guilty.
one.
Maybe he is guilty.
Yeah.
You know, he's found guilty by a court of law, and we have to respect the rule of law. Does it seem fishy? Yes.
Because
Does
of
it
the
seem-
evidence in the case.
Does it seem too convenient that he starts investigating the Vatican bank, finds irregularities, and all of a sudden he's in jail?
Well, it's
See-
the evidence of the case that kind of causes that conspiracy theory to kind of come about.
Right, but that is how conspiracy theories get started.
Are
Because it
born,
seems
yeah.
to make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Right?
No,
But it's
no.
based on conjecture. So it's
Right.
people developing a
it's
story
not.
without facts.
No,
It's the truth.
started a rumor.
Ryan Delacroix said it.
I'm a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, so
Or generator.
two of the people who were in charge of the Vatican bank at the time, one bishop, he was from the United States, and then another one, his name was Roberto Calvi, and he was from the Banco Ambrosiano, right? And a lot of the conspiracy theories revolve around them
Yeah.
and the Pope wanting to expose this fraud. And Roberto Calvi was found hanging from the bridge.
Yep.
He was a member of a Masonic lodge, and he
Yep.
was found hanging from a bridge, dead. And it was ruled a suicide, but they found stones in his pocket, like I said, which is kind of a sign of a Masonic assassination. So
Wow.
And is that a fact?
that's a fact.
Okay, that's a
That's
fact.
a fact.
I think also maybe his daughter was like kidnapped, or like there's some other stuff that went down with
There was a
his
couple
life.
other kidnappings, and there's things going around. So
Yeah.
So how do we know that that's a Masonic assassination
Because
with the
that's
rocks? Like,
but
is that
according to theories, that's it. you know?
Mason, hello, masonry, stones.
why would it be bricks? Why did they put like
It's
How
the
how big do you think
course-
his pockets are?
It's the course elements of building the bricks. It's even more rooted in.
So, but here's the thing. A lot of the conspiracies, because there was incongruities in the way that the Vatican reported John Paul I's death. Well, they said, okay, well, what time was he found? And the story changed a few times. Well, who found him? The story changed a few times. What were the circumstances around? What did his body look like when he was found? And there was a lot of mixed messages coming from the Vatican, right? And they weren't all the same story. So they said, people, well, there's something here. Vatican's covering something up. But the truth is that it was a nun who found him. So every morning, John Paul I would wake up at 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and this particular nun would bring his coffee to the door and leave it outside because it was viewed as impropriety for a woman to be in the Pope's personal
Sure.
apartment.
Yeah.
And that's good policy.
Yeah.
Well, she left the coffee out like every morning. Holy Father, your coffee's ready. And then 10 minutes later, it's still sitting there getting cold. Like, Holy Father, what are you doing? Because he was, very regimented in the time he woke up. 15 minutes go by, he hasn't answered. So she creeped open the door, and all of his lights in the room were still on. And he's laying in bed. He had documents on and still wearing his reading glasses. But he died of a heart attack in the middle of the night. That's the official and probably most likely explanation.
And back then there was quality medical personnel that could have done an autopsy to.
But no autopsy
understand.
was done.
Oh, okay.
So again, that lends some fire to the.
Well, is an autopsy something that has to be done? Because I think here you have an autopsy, right? I mean,
That's the
isn't
Pope.
there-
He's there's different rules in the Vatican. You don't
right.
have
Well,
to-
that's what I was saying.
Right.
It's like there's just different things going on there.
Well, there's so many gaps in this story. That's why,
it leaves it open.
it
to
leaves
conjecture.
it wide open.
So was Pope John Paul I actually killed by a secret conspiracy of the Vatican banks and the Freemasons?
Yes.
I don't think so.
No?
Yes.
I mean, what do we say?
I don't know.
I think
What do you
always,
say?
I think always the most reasonable and the most simple explanation is usually right.
Yeah.
And what is it? Probably died of a heart attack in the middle of the night.
How old was he? He was in his
75,
70s. Yeah, he was in
77.
his 70s. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
for all
That's
you people
crazy.
who watched The Godfather and that it was
Yeah.
Michael Corleone was involved in it, probably not. Now, there's a couple other things. Other people say, well, he was going there. The founder of one traditionalist movement, a priest, said that he had received a letter that he was to come to Rome and help reestablish the Tridentine Mass. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's, again, sounds pretty far-fetched. Other people say it was the CIA because he was going to break up some of the CIA operations in Central America and South America.
All right, now we're just getting all over the place here.
So everyone
it
basically
was SpongeBob and I mean, because
he was the
crab guy wasn't having a buffet. All right,
don't put this on Eugene Krabs. Eugene Krabs is a man of impeccable integrity. If you're going to do it anyway, put on Plankton.
Okay.
Plankton killed John Paul I because he was trying to get the Krusty Krab recipe.
There you go.
The Krabby Patty recipe.
All right, now we can switch
So
conspiracies.
I think we can kind of, I don't know. This one, is it true? Is it not?
They're never going to be able to close this case because
Maybe.
Well, there was no
you're right.
autopsy done,
Yeah, and no investigation.
No investigation,
and
so there's
now here's another papal conspiracy: is that all the popes since 1958, after the death of Pius XII, have not actually been the legitimate pope, because in actuality, there was a pope elected at the 1958 conclave, and it was not John the 23rd. It was actually Pope Gregory XVI, who would have been Cardinal Seri, and this is known as the Seri Thesis. Now,
Cardinal Seri?
Cardinal Seri, like, hello, hey Seri.
Yeah, I know, but this is a weird name.
Giuseppe Seri.
Excuse
Bless you.
Bless.
So the theory goes, and this is actually kind of documented, that during that conclave after the death of Pius XII, there's, what happens during a papal election?
A vote.
A vote. And what if there's not smoke? And what color is the smoke if there's a pope elected?
White.
Black, white, clear. All right, let's go to another papal conspiracy. And that's the conspiracy that at the 1958 conclave, it was not actually John the 23rd who was elected. It was actually Pope Gregory XVI who was elected, and his election was kept hidden or suppressed because of Soviet pressure.
And this is based on what? Like
they count the
accidental
votes.
Smoke that came out of the...
No, they count the votes, and then they're like, yo, let's just go out there and announce this, and then we'll burn them in the thing.
So when there's a papal election and they're in conclave, they take their votes, and if a pope is not elected, they burn the ballots, and black smoke comes out from the chimney of the Sistine Chapel. Well, in the 1958 conclave on October 26th at 11:53, white smoke was seen coming from the chimney, and everyone started cheering, right? And everyone was like, hey, I mean, even the Italian radio and the Italian news agencies like, habemus papam, there's white smoke. So everyone thought there was...
I think I recall something like this, and it was like accidental or something. Like they said that it was accidental.
Right. So then at 5:53, which is probably another vote, white smoke again. And they're like, okay, now there is... Vatican radio told the world, this is from Vatican radio, the smoke is white, there is absolutely no doubt a pope has been elected. After about a half an hour, the smoke turned black and changed. Right, so everyone's like...
This bunch of old guys around a fireplace,
like, let's go figure
Somebody
it out.
was having a bonfire.
Right, so they see this white smoke, even the Vatican radio saying, there's no doubt it's white smoke.
Yeah.
So they're like, cool, who's the new pope? And they're waiting for him to come out the window and give his blessing and can't wait to meet the new pope. But nothing happens. So they're like, okay, what is going on, right? So the theory that kind of stems from this was that, so then after a couple days go by, and then finally Pope St. John the 23rd is elected. But everyone's like, what happened there? Something wacky went. So going into this conclave, a Cardinal Giuseppe Seri was viewed as most people as the most likely to be elected. And according to this theory, he actually was elected, and he took the name Pope Gregory XVI. But Soviet spies had infiltrated it and said, if you elect him, we are going to nuke Vatican City, or we're going to nuke Catholic cities in the Eastern Bloc, because Cardinal Seri was going to be very opposed to communism and a very vociferous fighter of communism.
Now that's far-fetched to me, because why would the Soviets be so scared of a pope?
Why? Look at John Paul II. Look what happened when they got a pope who fought communism. He brought him down. That's exactly why the communists were afraid of the pope.
Yeah.
But that seems like an empty threat.
Yeah.
You know, like that would motivate everybody to
This is
change their
nuke
vote.
you if you don't do this.
This is 1958. This is like the height of the Cold War.
But the white smoke goes up and then the black smoke goes up. So that means like the Soviets were like standing there like, you better put that black smoke in. We're going to nuke everybody.
You put that black smoke back in.
And how did they sneak into the conclave?
The same way the United States did during the election of Benedict and Francis.
Well, I know somebody who was present at a conclave that was not a cardinal. It was my pastor. We should have him on the show. He can tell a lot about his experience there, and it's pretty cool.
That would be pretty cool.
Yeah,
We should do that.
he was the secretary to Cardinal Baum, who was blind, and so he literally did everything for him. So he actually like kind of participated with him in this conclave, which is pretty cool.
Now,
So I need to ask him if the CIA infiltrated this. He'd probably laugh in our face because he was actually a former CIA guy. Yep.
Maybe he's
Dun,
the
dun,
one.
dun, dun, dun.
I know the guy.
We need to bring him
know
on the show
guy.
and ask him
Yeah, we'll
straight
take
up.
this.
no, we can't put him in that situation.
We'll take this conspiracy and we'll confront him.
All right, so
You heard it here first.
So here's another thing that people point to as kind of acknowledgement of this. You know, there's been 2 Pope John the 23rds. There has been. One of them was an anti-pope.
Yes.
And the theory goes is that Roncalli took the name John the 23rd as acknowledgement and as penance, or essentially that he knew of his irregular status. Because the Pope cannot be, once he accepts, to his abdication is not valid if it is done under duress, right?
Sure. Like a knife at your throat or something like that.
Right, or just the threat that Rome would be nuked by the Russians. Now, so this theory basically says that we had a Pope in red. And so it's the Pope in red, or the Seri Thesis, that Cardinal Seri actually was the secret Pope for 30 years or whatever as a cardinal, or that even though he had no functional power, he essentially was the legitimate Pope. Now, in the 1963 conclave, they said the exact same thing happened because the smoke, again, white, black.
You know what I'm thinking? I think it's left over from the last conclave, and they just throw the black stuff in there.
Gets stuck in the chimney.
Yeah, well, it's the ashes on the bottom, hasn't fully burned.
Look, so after
Nobody
that,
cleans it.
Look, after this, they changed the process, and they started now. It wasn't just burning it, and then because in the old days, if you put wet hay on the ballots, it'll create black smoke. If you put like fresh hay on, it creates white smoke, or vice versa.
Interesting.
So
Hey.
now they're like, look, this is too confusing. We're causing all kinds of stuff. So now they put chemical additives to make sure that there is no doubt it is black or white.
I told you.
And it's not like the dean who's like, I'm going to burn this. And he's warming it.
Yeah.
They've made it a more professional process, as much as burning ballots to signify the election of the monarch of a state can be, you know, the year 2020. But a lot of people believe this. And this is kind of the bedrock of a lot of the sedevacantist theories, is that because
It's not the real Pope.
yeah, it's not the real Pope.
You guys
and
aren't in the real church.
This
We
Masonic
are.
infiltrator came in and they strong-armed Gregory the 16th, and they strong-armed in a Masonic who brought about Vatican II, and now we have nuns without habits, and it's all your fault. Again, crazy.
Are they all like Texans or something?
I don't know. Whenever
It sounds like they are.
Whenever I go with an
interview.
incredulous and stupid conspiracy believer, my voice is kind of halfway between Batman and George W. Bush. It's like, I tell you what, now we have a pope and he's a liberal heretic, and we should have our real pope, Seri, the cardinal pope in red. Otherwise, you guys are all liberal pope people. That's my impersonation.
I think what's born out of secrecy, though, is conspiracy. You know, that when it's this information is not made public and people aren't present to it,
Yeah.
people just love to just kind of fantasize about, you know, other types of probabilities and you know,
Yeah.
and think the worst. You know, think the worst of humanity and things that can happen from it.
Yeah, I think that's what, you know, when Monsignor Smith, who was Cardinal Baum's secretary, when he presented his experience of the conclave to everybody at our parish, like it was kind of humorous to hear about the proceedings and just how innocent it was with a bunch of older men who, you know, went to breakfast at 5 a.m. and chatted. And I'm like, what were the conversations about? He's like, well, you're not allowed to say, but he goes, I can assure you it was old people having breakfast. Like that was his response. So I think for our listeners, if you're interested in having him on, we've got some pictures of him. In fact, when Benedict was elected, he was in the picture because he was 3 guys behind him.
No way.
Absolutely. Because Cardinal Baum was the senior cardinal. So he was actually pictured when Pope Benedict went like this, you know? He was actually, his mug
At
was
the window when he was, no
absolutely.
way.
It is the most fascinating presentation. I think it was fascinating, but, you know, obviously.
How did you find out about it? Were you just in conversation with him and it came up and then?
I mean, yeah. Yeah.
And then you just said, can we do something at the parish and share?
Yeah. I was like, you got, can you share this stuff? And he's like, yes, I can share my experience there. I cannot share, you know, who Cardinal Baum voted for and some other things that, you know, went down. But certainly about the proceeding and how it happens and what goes on from a standpoint of the structure of it and how it's sort of done.
I think that would be very, very cool.
I think it would be
that,
cool too.
Have that
it
on
was
the show.
pretty cool. And then we can like during the video we could show some pictures and stuff. Hopefully we can edit
his
it
experience.
to show pictures of him there. He looks a lot different now, but but he's a good friend of mine. I you know, it'd be tough to get him here because he's a parish priest, but we'll see. Yeah.
Yeah, but the whole idea that that it was all secret elections and, you know, that there was actually a secret pope. I don't buy it.
I don't buy it either.
Not one
based
bit.
on that testimony. I'm
Right.
just like, it's just a lot of old guys. You know, I mean, it's just like people are pointing fingers at Pope Francis for all this stuff. I'm like, he's 83 years old. Like he doesn't have the energy to respond to every critic. It's impossible.
Pretty energetic for an 83-year-old guy, though.
I mean, how many 45-year-old guys
I
wouldn't
wouldn't
be
want to
able
keep this
do
schedule.
that?
I wouldn't.
Right? I know.
But yeah, again, crazy conspiracy. I think most of it comes from the fact that Cardinal Seri was always viewed as the conservative candidate. He was that time's Cardinal Sarah, and everyone was hoping for him to come in. And they had kind of what people would view as liberal popes successively with John the 23rd, Paul VI, and John Paul I. Who
So this is continued.
Yes.
This is continued ad infinitum since this has occurred.
Right. I mean, even up into the 1978 election of John Paul II, people say that he was the leading candidate and he almost won. He was a few votes short, and then John Paul II was a compromise between.
Yeah, I think you lose credibility after like maybe your
once
second.
or two. But here's the thing: Cardinal Seri is like, no, he never talked about it. He said there's no mention of it. He was on the Second Vatican Council. He worked in it.
Yeah.
He was, you know, he was it's just not true.
Yeah.
I mean, so many people wish it were true because they would rather believe that Vatican
right,
II,
and
Vatican II,
everybody's
and
wrong.
all the felt banners were the fault of communists and conspiracies, but it wasn't. So, sorry, I just don't buy this one at all.
I don't either.
All right. Now, here's one that's crazy. And look, I know it's probably only been 2 or 3 days without any Jesuit tricks, right? But the Jesuits are always up to their tricks. And one trick they've been accused of committing was the assassination of Abraham Lincoln.
I was not aware of that.
I've seen the chair that Abraham Lincoln was shot in. It's in Dearborn at the Ford Museum.
Why would it be there?
The collector. I mean, Henry Ford was a collector, and
Wasn't it the Ford Museum that he was shot at?
The Ford Theater.
Ford Theater. So that was that his theater?
No.
Oh, okay. Different Ford.
Yeah, that chair actually says Assassin SJ was here.
What's the
underneath the
What's
lining of the fabric.
What's the town he was caught in or hidden in Maryland? It was I've driven by there a couple of times. It's your name is Mud comes from that. Is it Mud? Mud was the name of the guy that harbored him.
So here's Dr. Samuel Mudd.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what it is. So Dr. Samuel Mudd's house is in Maryland.
Yep.
Wow.
Well, see,
Yeah.
okay, Maryland
He got pretty
was
far away from the theater.
Maryland. There was a lot of Catholics historically there.
Oh yeah,
And
Maryland.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, in the conspiracy, there was a lot of people in this, the actual conspiracy to kill assassinate Lincoln. From John Wilkes Booth, David Harold, who was a conspirator, helped aid and abet. Dr. Samuel Mudd, who tried to fix his leg where he was found. A lot of the conspiracy and the people who hung for this, they were all Catholic. They're like, hey, what's going on here? They're all Southern Catholics and whatever.
Yeah.
So
rural too.
Right. And at the time, everyone, there's the know-nothings, and people were very against the Catholic Church. And
What's a know-nothing?
It was a movement of kind of nationalism where all these immigrants from Ireland and Germany and Italy were coming over, and they're like, all you papists
Y'all
are
don't
coming
know
over.
nothing about nothing.
Yeah, all you papists are coming over and taking all of our American jobs, right?
Gotcha.
So, and Lincoln, in a lot of letters, Lincoln is very critical of the Jesuits and very critical of the Catholic Church. They were always like, what are they up to? They're trying to come over here and invade our sovereignty.
Is there like a book that details this? Because this is kind of new information to me. I'm curious about it.
I don't know of any books. I didn't really find any, but I mean, there's a lot of information out there. And there's a lot of, this theory goes all the way back to days after Lincoln was assassinated, that it was the Jesuits. Basically the premise of the theory is that the Jesuits did not like the American government supporting and having supported the unification of Italy and them trying to intercede on behalf of the Unionists in Italy to get rid of the Papal States, Garibaldi and all those people, right? Because the United States was on the side of the French and the French Revolution. They were on the side of the Italian unification, and they were always kind of, the liberty-minded Americans were at odds with the monarchical popes. And this assassination was the Jesuit retribution for the American meddling in Vatican affairs.
Well,
what do you think?
I'd be interested in sources of information myself, but yeah, at this point, it's like you said, conjecture, and it's a conspiracy theory. So, but if it is documented that Abraham Lincoln has this anti-Catholic
and Jesuit influence has always been strong.
Oh yeah,
in relationship to politics, probably more so than any other religious order. They're
Really?
up there. Oh yeah, Jesuit influence is pretty large. And you look at universities as well, so they have a greater control and
gotcha.
Power over education as well.
Yeah.
So again, based on power and authority and influence, the Jesuits have such a reach in comparison to so many other
and they
orders.
probably had so much more back then than they do now too.
Well, you look at like the gunpowder plot in England and the recusants in the in England, and the English hated the Jesuits because they thought the Jesuits' sole goal was to overthrow the Protestant king of England and reestablish a Catholic monarchy. And a lot of that hatred and whatever came over with the English to America. Now, here's something interesting about this all. What day was Lincoln killed on? April 14th, which was Good Friday. It was actually Good Friday. So they're like, oh, the Catholics with their Good Friday, this is their plot. And all of the people who were in the conspiracy theory, they all tied to one person, a woman named Mary Surratt, who was a Catholic. Her son was
a Jesuit.
No, he was found. At first he went and hid in Montreal in a church rectory. And then he was
immediately after the assassination.
He went up to Montreal to avoid arrest and was in a church rectory.
Why would he do that?
Because he was probably looking for sanctuary, right? Trying to get away. Another one was what's it? Papal Zouave? What's that? Do you know what that is?
I have no idea.
I think it's some kind of order or like military thing. He was one of those. Another accomplice, he had studied for the priesthood in the seminary. David Harold was from Georgetown, and Dr. Mudd was a Catholic. A former seminarian classmate of Mary Surratt's husband. All of them were Catholics. They all met. They all ran off to Catholic places or had went to seminary or Georgetown. So they're like, this is a Catholic plot. And in Lincoln's letters, he talks all kinds of junk about Catholics. Did the Jesuits kill Lincoln?
Well,
no.
Dr.
Conspiracy.
Mudd, it was coincidental that he ended up at his house, right? I mean, it wasn't like he ran Wilkes Booth, right? Ran to Mudd's house. He was fleeing from authorities that had a spot on him,
Right.
you know.
But again,
and he coincidentally landed at this guy's house. That's the story given there,
right, and it's probably true.
Yeah, yeah,
I really doubt that the Jesuits plotted to kill Lincoln, but
yeah.
I don't know, make up your own mind.
Mm-hmm.
I will.
Talk about
Some holes in
conspiracy. There's probably like we could probably spend an entire series and multiple episodes on conspiracies relating to the Jesuits.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
Wow.
Jesuits are tricky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they were founded, and immediately through the spiritual exercises and their just contagious spirituality just started booming.
It's
They
my
were good at what
spiritual-
they did.
It's my spirituality.
Yeah.
I if I was anything, I would be a Jesuit.
Yeah.
You
But-
would be.
I mean, I think their spirituality is very applicable.
Yeah.
And their reach and their courage and their evangelization is something that is just
Yeah.
There's nothing in comparison.
All right. Here's another one. You guys are going to like this one. Pope Joan. Not Pope John, Pope Joan.
And we're not talking about Joan of Arc.
No, we're talking about the theory
We're talking about a conspiracy.
that there was a female pope in the 9th century, known as Pope Joan, who
Was that when they were in Avila, 9th century? No, that was 11th or something.
yeah. So the theory is that I think they called him Johannes Anglicus, right? That was this woman's fake name, and she had studied because going to universities and whatnot was not allowed for a woman. So she had faked being a man so she can go do all these things. And she ended up being really smart, really good at studies, and eventually got elected a bishop and the Pope. But then she was found out when she gave birth to a kid during a papal procession, and then was stoned to death after giving birth in a papal
spot,
right on the street.
Gosh, that is hilarious. Oh Lord, have mercy.
But
That is pretty out there, man.
Yeah,
here's the thing, though.
yeah.
She gave birth during a papal
Oh
procession.
gosh! Hey, Johannes, you're getting kind of big there, buddy. You should cut back on the cookies after dinner.
So, I don't know whose baby is this. Yeah, they said, hey, someone leave a baby. Someone leave a baby here.
Somebody pick that kid up. Get him to the nuns.
It was on a procession from St. Peter's to the Lateran between the Colosseum and St. Clement's. Now, here's some interesting things. For hundreds of years afterwards, no pope would walk that path.
Just to prevent.
And that's a factor.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
That's weird.
That's a fact.
Well, you know,
They wouldn't walk that path, and people said they won't walk this path because this is the site where the female pope was stoned to death after dropping a baby.
That was
here.
speculation because they
Right.
wouldn't walk that path. Okay, gotcha. I was like, this is getting weirder.
But here's some things. Do you know where this theory comes from? Like papal chamberlains and actual monks. This was actually early in like the 13th centuries. Everyone accepted it as a fact. I mean, it was so much a fact in the church that they accepted it that they even had a statue of her in I think the Cathedral of Siena.
Oh gosh.
What did the statue look like? Was it
Had a baby coming out of it over here. And she's
like a
like,
surprise? Her face is all shocked.
I don't know what's happening. Miracle.
and then later the baby became the Pope.
Now we're
There we
talking.
go. Let's get deeper into this
Conspiracy
It's
goes
probably
deeper.
a Theophylactus.
thing. Theophylactus.
But
Phylacti.
now we've talked about the Theophylacti, the nefarious family from Tusculum who
Pornocracy.
hijacked the papacy. Now, these people who wrote this said that that happened during that time. And there was a lot of the Theophylacti popes who were named John. And the story probably comes from the daughter of the Theophylactus who had children with the Pope, who became the Pope and all that, right? So it probably comes from a embellishment of that theory, that Mariotza, who was the daughter of Theophylactus, who had a kid with Pope Sergius, who became Pope John the 11th. it's probably a bastardization of that actual history, that these incredibly corrupt people and this woman who was Theodora and Mariotza were kind of pulling the strings in Rome at the time. And it's probably, again, a elaboration that these uppity women were controlling the church at the time, and there's actually a female pope, and one of them was John the 11th, but they say Pope Joan.
So this is probably why the College of Cardinals was created to elect a pope. Well, who instituted that? I mean, like,
well, they've been around forever, but here's other things that led credence to that theory, according to the conspiracy theorists, is that the popes, when they were elected, would sit on this ancient chair, right? And it had a hole in the seat. You guys ever seen James Bond, Casino Royale?
Yeah.
You know the torture scene where they cut the hole in the chair and they're whack him in the underside?
Yeah.
Well, the chair was like that. And the theory was that on election, after Pope Joan, before allowing the Pope to take office, they would go up and check to make sure that he was a man.
Oh, that is just awesome.
But the thing is that
By like whacking him?
No, they were just making sure he had the proper plumbing for the job. God bless. Now,
there's an inspector.
But here's the thing, though. There was.
There has to be.
There isn't, yeah.
It's obvious. If they don't hit him with the whip, they've got to have an inspector.
Yeah, I mean, there is an official Pope, papal.
He gets whacked and then he gets a facial? What are you talking about?
Papal from under inspector.
From under.
Inspector from
but
under.
this Pope chair, the fact is that
believe?
this chair, it was a really old chair. And so the church kind of had it because it was, 1,000-year-old chair. And
what do we
Roman
use
times,
this for?
Right.
Hey, Giuseppe, why do we got this hole in this chair? Well, let me tell you.
Right, but the thing is that the chair...
For centuries, we used to whack the Holy Father.
Is this a toilet seat?
It was. It was. It was an ancient toilet seat or birthing chair from one of the emperor's houses, encrusted with jewels and diamonds.
The Catholic origins of the toilet bowl.
Of course you're going to encrust it with jewels and diamonds.
Because, they got this old chair. And there was always coronation chairs throughout history were whatever. Yeah. Like the one of Edward in England, whatever. But it was an ancient chair, but it had a hole in the bottom because it was probably a bidet or a birthing chair. But the theory was that they used it to check the Pope's
undercarriage.
Yeah.
That's great.
All righty then.
Okay.
Pretty wild stuff. Now, here's some things that are pretty crazy about it is that...
But there's more.
Everyone really assumed this was true. In the 14th and 15th centuries, Pope Joan was considered a historical person, and no one doubted her veracity. In the Cathedral of Siena, there was a carved bust of her among the popes. But then what happened is this is before kind of a historical critical method where they're like, let's see some documents. And then when people started using a real historical analysis, in the 15th and 16th century after the Renaissance, they're like, okay, this is completely untrue. They say that she reigned in 1855 and was reigned for 2 years, but they have papal documents documenting every single one of those years. And there was absolutely...
Man, you're squashing the conspiracy, man.
I know.
But they said let's just leave the conspiracies open, man.
But they said she reigned between Leo IV and Benedict III. But what happened was there was a long interregnum because of the Pope was not getting his election verified by the emperor.
Mm-hmm.
So they said that's what happened then, but not true. There's no documents. There's no historical documents of the time. There's no mention of it. But if there was any,
all right,
they would have found it.
Yeah.
So no Pope Joan.
All right.
But
thanks for disappointing me.
I'm sorry. You would want there to be a... Now, before I get into the last and the one that is true conspiracy, why don't you tell everyone how non-conspiratorially they can support us and learn about our sponsors?
I'd be happy to. We are most grateful for our sponsors. And I have to first start with Hallow. Hallow is the #1 Catholic meditation and guided prayer application in the App Store today. Be sure to visit Hallow because when you do, you'll see all sorts of prayer and meditation guided efforts that they have put together in a beautiful and most attractive way. From Tese to Lectio Divina to Rosary and to daily gospel reflections and so much more. This is a beautiful application that you should definitely have on your phone. And if you utilize this platform, you will truly be able to advance in not only your understanding of the Catholic tradition of prayer, but be able to cultivate that in your own practice, uniquely to you. This #1 Catholic meditation and prayer app is specifically out there for you to grow in your faith. We are so grateful for their work. We are so grateful for their sponsorship. And you should take a moment and check them out because they are truly at the very forefront of technological advancement and the new evangelization. So check out Hallow, Catholic Meditations and Prayer App today. We want to tell you about our sponsor, Exodus 90. Exodus 90 is 90 days of prayer and asceticism, cold showers and devout prayer moving through the book of Exodus so that men could find greater freedom in Christ. This program is a tremendous program that over 20,000 men have already gone through, and you should consider becoming the very next member in this very powerful movement. Please consider to join Exodus 90 now. Check them out. You will not regret it. Ave Maria University, our sponsor, is an institution of higher learning in the Catholic tradition, and one that is very, very dear to me, as I am an alumnus and a graduate of 2008 from the new campus. We were part of the first graduating class, and it is awesome to see how much Ave Maria University has grown and has become not only the youngest Catholic institution, but one of the most powerful, driven in academics and faith. It is a university that appeals to all. And we'd like you to consider becoming a student at Ave Maria University, or if you know someone that is of age that may be looking at colleges and universities around the country, be sure to tell them about Ave Maria. There are over 30 majors. There's programs undergrad as well as postgrad, all the way up to PhDs in theology. You do not want to miss a chance to attend this university. It is surrounded by the oratory, this beautiful church in the middle of Ave Maria town. Just 30 miles away from Naples and the beautiful beaches. It's in Southwest Florida, so the weather is beautiful. But the greatest thing and the most beautiful thing about the university is the community. The community life is a place where young people find belonging and, most importantly, encounter Christ in the beautiful tradition of the Catholic faith. So check out Ave Maria University today. You won't regret it.
All right, thanks for that, Padre.
My
Make
pleasure.
sure to check all those sponsors out. They really help us produce this show, and they're great products, and definitely check them out. Now, the last conspiracy we want to talk about is the one that is true, verifiable documents. Almost nobody would contest it's true, and that is the fact that the Pope tried to kill Hitler.
Like physically or through channels?
Pius XII.
Pius XII was not a physically intimidating man. He probably wasn't going to challenge Hitler to like a throwdown with like swords. Yeah, it's going to be like a
Ninja?
Yeah,
Pope
like
Ninja.
Kill Bill.
Pope Ninja the Great.
I remember Rabbi Dallin wrote a book, The Myth of Hitler's Pope. He was
Right.
one of my professors.
Yeah, so many times.
There's so many myths and conspiracies surrounding the papacy of Pius XII.
Sure.
And of course it would be because, all of Europe, the entire world was in unrest. And then there was a lot of accusation that the church didn't do enough and Pius XII didn't do enough. And all of these other conspiracies started, building out of that.
Weren't the conspiracies on both sides? Like he was helping the Nazis and then he was helping the, like,
No,
wasn't
the conspiracy,
there a variety?
The thought is, or the myth of Hitler's Pope is that Pius XII didn't speak out about the Holocaust and the Shoah, and that he was basically didn't do enough to protect the Jews. But that's not true. They issued hundreds of thousands of falsified documents and baptismal certificates so that Jews could say, no, I'm Catholic.
Yeah, they harbored so many Jews.
They put him in.
Pope Pius XII is a saint, man.
And John the 23rd, too.
Mm-hmm.
John the 23rd, and Paul the 6th even, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the myth that Pius XII was Hitler's Pope is absurd because on 3 different conspiracies and 3 different occasions, he conspired with members of the English and the American secret services, as well as undercover German agents, to have Hitler assassinated. Now, they even made a movie about this.
It was
Valkyrie.
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 Klaus von Stauffenberg.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Right.
On Stauffenberg.
And that one almost succeeded, where
That was very cool. That was a great
Bomb in
movie.
his suitcase. Yeah.
That was a powerful movie. Did you see that?
Yeah. I mean, very good.
They clipped Hitler and they maimed him for the rest of the life. They didn't kill him, but they maimed him. But basically, members of the higher up in the German military knew they weren't going to win, and they knew Hitler was out of his mind. And what they wanted to do was kill Hitler, put themselves into power, and establish a peace treaty that was tenable for their position. And they went and they used the Vatican as an intermediary to negotiate with the English and the Americans, and the Pope would essentially pass documents back and forth, provide intelligence of the movements of Nazis in Italy, and the Germans would provide movements of Hitler in Germany. And on 3 occasions, the Pope was involved in conspiracies to kill Hitler. He even had a nickname in these conspiracies in the English Secret Services and the American Secret Service. You know what his code name was?
Bulldog.
The Chief.
The Chief.
The Chief.
In the documents, he was only referred to as the Chief. Like, intelligence from the Chief tells us this or that.
Wow.
They almost got Hitler, and there was like German politicians and lawyers who were like triple agents, flying planes back and forth from Germany to Vatican City, leaving documents secretly with the Pope, hidden among other papal documents that seemed mundane. Then he would pass them to English agents. So the theory that Pius XII was Hitler's Pope is absurd because, number one, Hitler hated Catholics. He even lamented that Catholics, he was sad that Germany was a Catholic nation in history, and he wished they were Muslims because Catholics were flabby and soft and too loving. He's like, and if we had been Mohammedans, this war would have been much easier. Mohammedans. He wished that Germany had an Islamic background. That's a true story.
Yeah.
But I think it's frankly, pretty
demonstrable,
awesome that the Pope got pretty close to getting Hitler taken out.
So I like that we finished the show with a conspiracy that was verified.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
showing that conspiracies can be verified.
How long was it a conspiracy for?
From the
World War II till
most 1938, 33. I mean, from the very beginning of Hitler's power, the church was opposed to him. And from every day of Pius's reign until the day that Hitler killed himself, the Pope was working against him secretly, diplomatically, with multiple agencies and multiple governments to take him out.
But the conspiracies surrounding Pius XII were consistent, all the way through to most recent history, really, where documents have been reviewed and they unsealed a number of things in the Vatican archives, and there's a lot of proof that he helped a lot of people in World War II.
Didn't Hitler kill a lot of Catholics too?
Absolutely.
Like it wasn't he? I mean, the Jews were like the biggest group of people.
The Jews, disabled people, gypsies, homosexual persons, Catholic clergy, anyone who opposed him, and anyone who anyone who upheld the dignity of all peoples was in Hitler's path.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a really great book on it. It's called Church of Spies, I believe. And it really details the plot in a lot of detail that we could get into if you want to, go through very minute details, but Father Rich would probably explode.
I would definitely take a snooze.
You would explode like a briefcase next to Hitler.
So are you identifying yourself as Hitler right now?
Did the chief send you?
Did the chief send you? Oh, that's awesome.
Has.
All right.
Cool.
So those are some kind of crazy Catholic conspiracy theories. Mostly junk. They're interesting.
No, I enjoy a good conspiracy.
Right.
Yeah.
So we enjoy the fact that you joined us for this most recent episode of the Catholic Talk Show. Again, we want to make sure that you're following us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And if you enjoy this content, to ensure that this content continues into the future, please consider being a patron of ours at patreon.com/The Catholic Talk Show. There you'll see everywhere that you could support our show financially to ensure that we continue to produce this content. And a big shout out to all of our patrons. A big thank you, because we wouldn't be able to do it without you. And we'll see you next week. God bless.